So, starting up from what I just heard sitting out there. So, first of all, Rajesh and I are the same batch. So, the JE ones, in those days at least, they were the Shah Rukh Khan and the Amitabh Bachchans. And I had always heard his name, that, oh, there's this guy called Rajesh who went to study physics. I ended up meeting him only last year. So, I have kind of now gotten to know him, so forth. And by the way, Rohini has also followed a similar career path that Rajesh described. Trained as a PhD, worked in BCG in consulting, worked in Jana Bank, and whatever is not talked about beyond Microsoft and all, she's an expert in Sanskrit, she's into classical music. So I think we already have, folks from our previous panel represent what Rajesh spoke about, an interdisciplinary, much more wider way of things. Unfortunately, in the day-to-day that we live in, all of us where we get our salaries from, we have to live in the next 3 years and not the next 30 years. So while we'll keep all that has been said at the back of our mind, we will get down to more brass tacks on what we can do tomorrow and day after and all of that, while keeping in mind what Rajesh and Rohini led us to think that we should figure out ourselves, we should also mold ourselves, all of those things. But how do we also earn the bread and not get laid off is the focus of this panel will be, right? Because, you can't have a conversation with the boss at the end of the year. I was trying to mold myself like a clay. I'm so inspired by Einstein. Great. Please do it at home, not at my money, right? So we will focus on these practical things. So before this panel, we all got together and we said, which are the things that we should talk about? And we identified sort of 3 themes that we'll explore. And usually every theme is sort of, these days, very binary. So we said we'll look at it as a continuum. So first theme that we picked up was, we keep hearing about this whole generalization versus specialization. So in the GCC world, many of us started long ago. We were all generalists. We were the GCC leaders. Over time, functional specialization, industry specialization came along. And if you look at this, people here represent everything. You have people representing banking, financial services, healthcare, functions like IT, everything. So you have the entire breadth here. So we'll ask them about what is this thing about generalization versus specialization, because now people are again saying, actually we need generalists again because AI will be the specialist. So what is that thing about generalization versus specialization? The GCC will explore number 1. Number 2, like someone said, we can't do any conference without AI. So will AI steal our job or will it enhance us? What is the experience at the GCCs that we have? We'll speak about that. And the third, about the Indian talent, which is the bestest and the greatest, but half of them can't get employed. So what is true and how do we think about talent and academia collaboration? So these are the themes that we will explore. And like I said, I think it will be contextual. There will be no one right answer. So with that background, let me start with the first one, the generalization versus specialization, and we'll let each panelist share their perspective and get to learn from them. So Venkat, why don't we start with you on this topic?
Thank you, Pankaj. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Hello? Yeah. Okay. Great. No, it's a pleasure being here. I had thought about some ideas about how can I talk about concepts and some of the theses, but I think Pankaj said we had to be really practical and make sure you're all employable. So I need to rethink about my answers. But look, I think to your point, Pankaj, about how the roles have changed and evolved over GCCs. Like, when I was playing, in a GCC role like 15 years ago, the roles, I think Anshuman referred this in his opening remarks. So primarily were back office roles, right? Where you would basically run some end of day jobs, and the value chain was lower in the value chain. The roles were very, I think one-dimensional, wherein I call it as more of a I-shaped technologist, where the stroke of I represents an expertise in just one domain. So we could have roles in, back-end engineering, some risk, or infrastructures, or operations, etc. Now, fast forward, dramatically the expectations and the roles have changed, and I think we need to shape ourselves from what used to be called as I-shaped technologist to more of a T-shaped technologist, where the one stroke of T, which is the depth, it really represents the expertise in one technical domain, and the broad stroke, which is the stroke of the other half, the T, which represents really in a horizontal, where you need to have fluency in more than one domain, and that's the ask from these companies are. So essentially, even the role of AI to some extent, the roles are becoming like you have to wear multiple hats, where you are expert in one technical domain, but you need to understand the business, and you have to wear multiple hats as we really navigate this firm. So I think, I feel like this is an excellent opportunity where there's a huge opportunity to move from those back office roles to more front office roles where the real value is, because that's where you enable value and you know have an impact to the bottom line. So in my point of view, if you are able to really build a depth in one area and then build that fluency in AI, fluency in business domain, I think you will really be a well-rounded technologist.
Yeah, and again, going back to your point, Pankaj, I have two professors sitting in front of me, so I'll be very careful in what I reply. But essentially, from the world that I come from, right, which is the consulting world, the typical way the skills sort of have evolved is to say that you are a journalist when you're starting off. You would want to learn, various elements of the business and then sort of get into a specialization. But having said that, not here to talk about any frameworks or any concepts as such, but some of the experiences that I have lived with, maybe that is something I wanted to share. And this is something which we started within Deloitte a couple of years back, which is called the Purple Club, which is essentially a combination of people who are tech and domain, and that's where the color purple which comes from, which is red and blue, a combination of red and blue, right? And this Purple Club is essentially to say that I will teach domain to folks who are technologists, and the other way around, right? For people with domain skills should be able to learn technology as well. And if you see the recent context in the last maybe couple of years since Anthropic and OpenAI have taken over our world, essentially they came up with this concept of forward deployed engineers, right? And when I see the job description for any forward deployed engineer, it is everything, right? It is a combination of someone with domain skills, someone with deep technology skills, who understands the platform very well, and a lot of other skills, right? In terms of earlier you used to have only a full stack developer or a JavaScript engineer like that, but now I think it's a combination of everything that clients are also looking for. And when you look at the description of a forward deployed engineer, it is like a unicorn. I don't know how many people will actually fit the description. Maybe it is a hype. At some point, it will settle down and it will go back to people with specialist skills as well. But going back to the context of the Purple Club, I think essentially that is what we will look for, as we progress as well. That people who understand and bring technology and business together, that is something I think, will make a lot of difference as we move forward.
Hello, thank you, Pankaj. Thank you, everyone, for inviting me. So, the uncomfortable truth is that there is a gap, right, between what we are seeing from the academia, let's say an engineer or an MBA specialist coming out of college versus what GCC specific talent or professional that we have seen. Having set up 3 GCCs from scratch and have seen some of the career growth of people who succeed in GCCs, I would say that essentially we are looking at business outcomes focus. So understanding business, domain, technology, but ultimately business. What is the end product? What's the end value that you are generating for the business, for your customers, for shareholders? That's very important. So that whole value chain focus is full stack for me. Not just the full stack of skills, but full stack of value chain is full stack. Second thing that I constantly hear about from functional leaders globally is that we are not today demonstrating ownership. Professor Rajesh pointed out something about curiosity, about freedom, and then about ability to make a change, ability to make something at a global level which is scalable, ability to understand upstream dependencies, the neural networks that we talked about. Because organizations are actually also a microcosm of nature, right? They are so interdependent. There are hundreds of moving parts. It's not departments. And therefore, to be able to navigate through these interdependencies requires a lot of focus on the outcome. So that's second. And the third thing I constantly hear is this behavioral density, which is cultural fluency, which is about ability to speak up, being assertive about your architectural choices, ability to say why this choice will work in a global platform, how this will impact, and ability to say no. You know, those are some of the things as well. Again, we discussed in the first session that maybe our education system is, training us to be doers and not really owners. And that's where the ownership needs to come in. So it's a lot of things together, domain, technology, plus a little bit of behavioral ownership as well, so self-ownership, to be able to focus on the ultimate value that we generate.
So I think my fellow panelists have already taken a lot of points. So what I would just like to kind of emphasize upon is slightly different points. I agree with all the things that everyone has said. The new wave of GCC, especially who are coming in the last couple of years, we call that this is like GCC 3.0, where it's kind of directly getting into the core, you're getting into product, engineering, and everything. It all comes with an added responsibility, as Mukta said, around knowing the domain. So my company is in the business of K-12 education in the US. We hired a bunch of smart engineering people, but it's been a journey where now the people who are building some products are saying this is from an educator persona, this is from a student persona. That means they have now understood the domain. So it is outcome versus output, and I think the faster we learn that, that's very important. Another thing from a talent readiness perspective, which I think is also a little cultural in terms of how we've kind of been brought up, is the art of storytelling. I have met a lot of my colleagues who will explain a very kind of a complex topic in a very simple fashion. You could probably see that in Professor Gopakumar a little earlier. But I think a lot of us get bogged down with details and you're not really conveying the key message. So domain, along with the ability to share that in a simple fashion which is understood by your kind of audience is I think a very, very key requirement.
Thank you, everyone. And I think the only name which may not be familiar on this slide is Gilead Sciences. I recently joined Gilead 3 months ago. We are not yet in India, and that's something which we are going to bring our footprint in India very, very soon. But I had experience like Mukta working and setting up 3 GCCs in last 20-25 years. And I think the panelists covered pretty much most of the point. I'll bring 2 different elements to it. Number one is, Venkat, you talked about the I and the T model. I'll take a little bit of abrasion on that. Maybe I would call it as V model, because even when we go deeper, our depth also need to increase. So we have to become broader, but need to increase the depth. So rather than, I would say, T and I, we also need to think, especially in the current scenarios, new GCCs are coming. They also want to take the leverage of what has been done in India GCCs for last 20 years. So for that, most of the time we are looking for those V leaders who can have both the things, because in a startup environment, you have to do many, many things by yourself. Another element, I guess, when we talked about depth, and Rajeev, you touched it very, very importantly, empathy is something, especially I come from healthcare, life sciences segment. What we are seeing is there is a lot of tech coming in, domain is coming in now, but our empathy should not be taking the back seat, because when we are designing solutions, how we are looking at our patients, our own people who are working as our internal stakeholders, having those happy paths which we are trying to identify through technology. Because I'll give you a very disruptive example maybe. Look at what the technology is doing. We can use technology for having more debates. There are disruptions happening, wars happening. So leveraging a technology to kill people versus leveraging a technology to have the right empathy to treat the diseases. And especially in Gilead Sciences, we are working on life-saving diseases. Most of our medicines, whether it is on virology, oncology, or inflammation, all of the diseases which we are working on life-threatening. Our motto itself is, if it is difficult disease, that's what we take on. So for us, when we look at some of these AI solutions and how we look at the skills, we really look for that empathy in the candidate who can think through saving. Imagine someone who is suffering from cancer, unfortunately. We all understand how difficult it is for the treatments. The journey of that patient itself is difficult while you are getting through the treatment. And also, if you can add more days to the individual life, how meaningful it is. So leveraging technology with empathy is something, Pankaj, I would like to mention.
Thank you. And being the moderator, I can now put a framework in place. So this is a framework which I use in my own team. So our education system famously trifurcates our people into humanities, commerce, and science. So I tell my people that you are science, but you have to add commerce and humanities and become a full stack human being. But you have to start with humanities. Absolutely. What needs to be done, understand the commercial, and then use technology to solve it. So I think that's a framework I think we can all probably embrace, because many a time we hire engineers and scientists who have no connection to commerce or humanities, and I think adding all these three layers to become a single member unicorn is something that we can aspire for. So thank you, panel. Now I'll reverse, because someone will say that I don't get a chance to speak. So on the AI question, on what has AI been doing so far, and in your case you are a new GCC. In fact, yours is the most interesting one, that the company has come here and told you, develop a business and do the GCC both. We don't care, right? So that's a new phenomena which might happen in future. So help us understand the role of AI so far and in future. And again, we'll go reverse.
Sure, Pankaj. Thank you for that. As I mentioned, Gilead Science, we do not have our footprint in India yet. So we are bringing our business plus our GCC together. We are going to bring that. The approach, and these are initial days, I've just joined, I'm working on the strategic leadership team, and we are looking at GCC not only in India. The role is to look for across the world, what are our needs, and develop a global strategy, what will make sense where. We are not going into the immediate run, which I have seen in my last 20 years of going and starting with the cost arbitrage and then going further. The mandate which we are creating is very clear, that looking at the lens of our AI. We don't want to hire people or build the capabilities which will be moving away very soon. So looking at the process, and when we look at the process, first we look at the patient and that. I'll give you an example. Just building on the previous example I was talking about, if we can save time. So these are life-saving drugs. And if you look at some of these diseases are very, very crucial. The accessibility also is one of the challenges in many of the countries. So how do we look at the holistic, whether it is in our drug discovery, drug development, or drug delivery as well? So we have categorized all our AI efforts into this. It's not a broad approach to implement AI on everything. There are very, very specific 20 use cases, something which we have identified in these three categories, which helps us to reduce the timing of, when we are doing our some of the experimentation modelings which are happening, then we can be faster and nimble. That also helps us in a way on ESG too. If we are able to do the same thing so that's what, as of now, Pankaj, we are trying to do from AI, especially into our Gilead Sciences.
So I think we are an education company, and AI is going to play a very, very key role. We are looking at AI from two different angles. One is obviously using it in a product. Second is to really improve our workflows and business flows. And for that, as Vineet said, we've also got 9 use cases that we are really trying to kind of AI enable as a company. But I'll kind of take a slightly different angle. We are in the business of education, especially K-12. So our approach has been to really kind of use AI very responsibly. We serve the US market. So our approach has been to really have the educators who are AI enabled. So a lot of AI related aids, whether it's a teacher aid, whether it's in the content, whether it's in their lesson planning, whether it's in any kind of analytics basis, a lot of student data that they get, it is going to enable the educator. We are, as a company, we have taken an approach not to really kind of expose children directly to kind of AI, except we've got a very powerful voice AI engine which really helps them with their speech and phonetics and pronunciation. So that's been our approach. We are really kind of using AI to make sure that we get those 10x kind of a gains, where what I mean by that is whatever is, let's say, on our roadmap for the next 3 years, how can that be fast-tracked earlier? And we're seeing kind of goodness on that, at least in the areas of product engineering and services.
Yeah, and likewise in the healthcare pharmaceutical industry, I think for us, sense of urgency and outcome focused are two very important purposes, right? Why we exist. Patients are dying, we need to have medicines come to them faster. So, you know, in drug discovery, computational chemistry, computational biology, in situ work to make sure how molecules interact with our body, and how we can have more predictive analytics on that. We are using AI platforms a lot to fasten our journey to bring the drug to the patients who are waiting. Second is, of course, about our efficiency improvements, literacy being improved for AI tools, for everybody to use it as a catalyst, to use it as a tool to help them do better. So a lot of interventions in supply chain, in manufacturing, in general systems. But again, as I say that, you know, it's easy to see tools, but how to make those tools actually work in an environment which has a legacy, which has a cultural footprint, which has a global footprint, is you know, judgment. It's a lot of wisdom. It's a lot of judgment. It's a lot of negotiation. It's cultural sensitivity. So these are tools, but to make them work is human, and that's where, you know, we are wanting to see how we can build the organization to actually use the catalyst as a catalyst.
I think from a Deloitte standpoint, right? I think without AI, I don't think there is any you know, going forward or a future. There is nothing like skills that are only technology skills or strategy skills. So AI is definitely very, very important from our kind of business as well. But few things that we are doing to sort of make sure that the entire workforce. So for example, Deloitte in India is almost 1 lakh people, and just the Deloitte India business is about 53,000 people. To make sure that these are AI ready and upskilled, I think there are a number of programs that we are running currently. For example, and this will tie back to some of the academicians who are sitting here as well. We run a program called Embark, which is essentially to say that I will invest in the students who are coming into my workforce and make sure that they are upskilled and trained on some of the things that are relevant for me as a business. Right? That is a major investment that is happening, whether it is being done by the college or the organization itself, but it is a very important aspect to sort of look at. At the same time, I think AI for us has been to look at two lenses, right? One is to look at from the lens of a service delivery transformation, to say that the way I service my clients, is there a way I can bring in efficiency? I can make it faster, better, and I wouldn't say cheaper. I wouldn't say it is coming at a lower cost or anything, but at the high quality that we are looking at. And especially if you look at Deloitte as a business, we are also an audit organization. So we want to make sure that the quality that we deliver to our organization, to the clients that we serve, is top notch. So for example, we built something called as Research Avinya. Avinya is the short name for, or the Hindi name for innovation, which basically, has taken some of the large language models, and we have fed a lot of the audit related policies, procedures, companies laws and all of that. And it has been able to be used by the practitioners in a manner that it is like a research insights tool, right? And it is a very simple idea, but what has resulted out of that is the teams are able to save millions of hours in doing the research work that we usually do. So that's where some of these are important for us to look at how, I think Professor also spoke about it, and Mukta, you also mentioned that how do we make sure that this is going to help us rather than looking at as an enemy or something we have to fight against. I think there is nothing like fighting against AI. It has to be used as an augmented intelligence. And I see it as if every organization, every employee of an organization has that augmented capability and the intelligence, I think it's going to only help us do things faster and better.
Cool. I think in the context of financial services, there's obviously a lot of investment that the frontier, AI companies are doing, because it makes sense, because in the financial service world, there is so much manual operational work that we do. I think there's bigger ROI when it comes to using AI for automating and trying to, make an impact. But having said that, given that we deal with people's money, I think our approach to AI has been that, we should use it in a very responsible way. I think governance plays a big role. Obviously, we are regulated entities, so there are various regulatory bodies that really dictate in terms of how AI should be used. So we need to be careful in making sure that we adhere to all those compliance regulations around how we use AI and what are the use cases. Making sure there is always human in the loop, any of the business processes, so that AI can generate the output, but there is always a human who actually looks at data and makes a judgment call. So for us, especially, I think our sort of maturity of AI adoption, I think we figured out that AI coding tools are the most mature of all the tools, because everything is about generating code. So I think a lot of frontier labs did train their models of how you can write better code. So I think we see a lot of, I think in the last, I would say 12 months, we have really seen huge efficiency gains and productivity gains in just how these code assistant tools are able to write code, analyze code. So we started obviously with prompt engineering as to how developers can write a prompt and generate a code for a given problem. And then off late we are seeing something called loop engineering, where the LLM models or the agent harness is not just writing code, it's also actually deploying the code, it's actually testing the code and then fixing. So the whole loop of how do you actually iterate through a software development life cycle is actually emulated by these AI coding assistant, and that's fascinating. I think we see generally stats of around 60 to 70% of the code now is AI generated, and a lot of our developers' time is actually spent in just reviewing the code and making sure the code adheres to certain software principles and tenets. The next one that we see is for business users. I think there's a lot of generic tools out there, so-called AI agents. I think those are, a great tool to have. Of course, you need to have the right guardrails, but giving an ability, a playground for users, business users, to actually upload their documents and data and use that for more analysis and helping you get some insights. I think that's probably the next big curve. And we also did some AI hackathons where we just identified a couple of business use cases across, gave it to our engineers and said, hey, solve this problem. And we see that those general purpose tools, have their own limitations. I think there is opportunity where you need to customize certain agents, and that's where I think agentic, development comes in, where you need to build your own, platform using SDKs and agentic AIs to actually build business workflows that really meets the needs of your organization. And I think that's probably the third, evolution. And I think we are learning. I think some tool that we built sometime a year ago, I think we just had to throw it away because that was purely a prompt engineer-based model, and now the world is moved towards more agentic React and action loop. So I think it's rapidly changing. Technology is real. We need to be careful about tokenomics, because I think you've probably heard, it's easy to burn the tokens. I think you need some governance around how do you really control those limits and how do you use it for. But I think the technology is fascinating, and I think we just need to embrace it and start playing and experimenting with as we go.
Thanks. So I think I'll probably go back to reflecting on the same framework of a full stack human being. So I'm thinking if there's a full stack organization, and if I look at the knowledge of humanities, commerce, and tech, the top two reside usually in senior people, older people, and the bottom one reside mostly in tech teams or the younger people. So I think the opportunity now is how to bring all of them together across functions, across geographies, all of that. And I think that's where the bigger aspect will be. Today, I think more or less it's happening very tactically. A few things are being done. We are at a yellow belt level. We need to go to the black belt level. So thank you for that. I think last question is related to the academia and the talent and so on and so forth. Now I'll start with Mukta in the middle. Your thoughts on how do we think, and you have seen many talent evolutions and you have changed your hiring practice. What would you tell the academic institutions? How can we collaborate better? How can we bring them together to create a new breed of talent which is ready for the next 30 years, as Professor also articulated? What can we do there? And what are you doing? And what are some ideas that others can take away? And same question for all.
No, it's a fundamental question in front of us, and my humble 2 cents here, and I'm sure the panel will add a lot of value to this. As I said, when we look from industry lens and from success lens, okay, it is about looking at the ultimate outcome. So how academia can do is break these silos about subjects, bring that interdisciplinary knowledge, bring that curiosity through projects, but projects that really are real life projects and challenge them for failure points, right? So what can fail? Because we are talking about, if you join a Fortune 500 company, you're talking about a very legacy, complex scale up. You are talking about stakeholders that are embedded into the system. You're talking about stakeholders that are multicultural. You're talking about legacy outcomes, regulators, data privacy, safety, cybersecurity, hundreds of things on one platform or one solution that you want to globally scale up. At that time, you cannot be restricted to like one particular cell. You have to be systems thinker. You have to think holistically, and you have to think of the interconnectedness. So have that kind of interconnectedness built through the projects, challenge them more with what could be the domain specific, like a banking, for instance, a solution for banking. What does it entail and how can it fail, right? So the ability to identify risk, failure points, complexity of that, if we can embed in some of these projects or the low touch and high touch things that we are doing with industry, that will take them to the next level. Yeah.
So I think building on to what Mukta said and Professor Gopakumar said earlier, it's like a little bit of a dichotomy. On one side, we definitely need specialization, understanding of the domain. But within the domain, again, today, anyone can write a code, thanks to Claude, thanks to any of that. So I think the whole idea is to really be problem solvers, have that curiosity to really look at a problem, and then you've got the resources at your disposal. So be kind of innovative to keep trying that out and solve it. I think the organizations are going to become fundamentally much leaner as we go in terms of the hierarchy as I see it going forward. There will be people who will be doers. There will be people who will kind of own outcomes of a particular business process. And then there will be a small group of people who probably, again, that roles will keep interchanging, who will be kind of thinking on strategy and the long-term plans. But I think folks will probably keep exchanging the roles from time to time. But the key thing that will kind of keep everybody in the race is that curiosity and that problem-solving kind of.
Thank you, Mukta and Rajeev. I'll build it on from another element, which is on emotional quotient. While we are going deeper into the tech side, but what I believe when any of the global organizations or new talent is joining in, it's not about EQ teaching or learning one subject, clearing the exam on EQ. I think EQ is embedded. Pankaj, you alluded to it, keeping human in the center, not as one of the work streams to work around it. So I think EQ, I'll give you an example. Most of the time, being a student, when I was in college, most of our curriculums are wherein we are individually working. I'm doing my assignment, I'm working individually, but what happens the moment you join in the organization? You clear your interviews, you are campus done, you join. The expectation is you should be working in the team. So whatever 90 to 10 ratio was there, 90 individually and 10% of you working in a team, collaborative environment, in the moment you join a global organization, it's other way around. And it's not only India, multicultural. I think Mukta alluded to those, some of the pointers earlier. So how do we help our academia can help our, the new talent which is coming to be ready for that? I'll give an example which we are trying now on the AI side. One of the big gap generally comes, everybody we have 18,000 people in our organization, and we realize when it comes to the coaching, it generally goes to some of the senior management, middle management layer, but you cannot have coach assigned for everybody. So leveraging technology for coaching, so we have an AI solution which we are using called Nadia, which is a coach given to everyone. You can actually do a lot of conversation even when you are going for preparation of your goals, to your one-on-ones, even not only manager to other one. So that's where I'm saying EQ can be really helpful, because if you look at Pankaj, especially when we look at the organization, how the performance is evaluated. It is not only the performance, it's the behavior side as well. But in our academia, it's only one side. But some of our students get deja vu. Oh, I did it best. I'm the best. Yes, you are the best, but your team has to be also be the best. And I think that's where it would be really helpful in a global environment. Yeah.
Yeah, for the next 30 years, I don't know, Pankaj, but I think what we can do now is something I can speak about, because I think the landscape is changing almost every hour, every day. So, for example, I'll tell you this initiative that we do with campuses. And every year, Deloitte goes to campuses and we hire interns who come in for a fixed duration of, let's say, 2 months or 3 months. And typically what has happened, and I think all the organizations will associate with it, the interns come in, they take their own sweet time, the organization takes its own sweet time to figure out what work needs to be given to them. And by the time it is figured out, it's time for them to leave the internship as well. But what we did this year was quite path-breaking, I would say. We ran something called as Hacksplosion, and HirePro was a partner in that with us. We essentially went to 60 colleges, and many of them probably are in the room as well, across the country. And we launched this Hacksplosion program, where the idea was to give use cases that are relevant from our standpoint, that are relevant from our client standpoint. And we also give you the platform on which you build this, right? Otherwise, typically a lot of the innovation that is done is on disparate systems, and there is no ability to scale that innovation subsequently. So that's where we gave the use cases, we gave the platform to them. Around 21,000 students applied as part of the Hacksplosion. And out of that, I think 18,000, we trained them on the platform that Deloitte owns right now, which is called GenW.ai. And essentially, 21,000 out of that, 150 students were shortlisted. They were brought into the Deloitte office. They presented their ideas. We had the CEO and, the chief operating officer. All of them actually sit through some of these ideas and identify the top winning teams, right? So while this was the whole process, I think what happened at the background was that this was the first time I've been with, in this consulting world for the last 15, 20 years. And this was the first time I saw, practitioners or teams actually fighting for the interns. They wanted these interns because what we created was something which is very valuable for the organization. These are people who now have some core new skill which is the need of the hour, and that's what they brought in, right? And now I think almost 150 of them who have joined, all of them have expressed that they want to continue and expand their internship beyond the 2-month duration. They want to do actually a 1-year duration internship, right? So again, that was a win-win for the students, for us as an organization as well, because I mean that's the way I'm looking at it. That if we can create an impact which is here and now, and learn some of these new age skills, I think that will be just the new future for us.
Yeah, look, by no stretch of imagination, I want to feel like you are in a kindergarten class. But look, in terms of my analogy about how the role and the expectations are changing from people, we started with like I-shape, right? to T-shape, and then thanks, Vineet, you added the V-shape. But I think for, students, I think, the aspiration is to become a O-shape, right? Which is basically well-rounded, right? You need to have, I think, jack of all trades. AI is making us a more of a generalist, not a specialist anymore. I think, my fellow panelists mentioned, you have to be more like a problem solver. Like no more you will call yourself as a software engineer, a backend engineer, or database engineer, UI engineer, right? You are just a problem solver. You have to use the right AI tools at your disposal to solve the problem. So imagine a world where the role would change, where you will have to wear a hat of, someone like a product manager who will, take the business requirements. You will do a quick prototyping using AI tools. You will then go and build it. You will deploy it. You will support it, right? So no more handoffs between different set of people. I think you have the complete ownership end to end, from all the way from taking the requirements all the way to shipping the software and having an impact. And that's what AI tools are going to help you. But I think at the same time, we should also be cognizant of the fact that don't just succumb to these AI tools where in college and academics, you still have to learn the fundamentals of engineering, right? And it's important to understand the basic tenets of, in the case of software engineering, data structures, object-oriented principles, how does, various, big data problems are solved, how distributed systems are solved. Because AI can help you, but at the end of the day, you still need to own the system architecture. You need to own an enterprise architecture. And that is only possible when you really know the fundamentals. Somebody really gave a good example of, if you used AI tools to just build systems, it's as good as building a skyscraper in a desert, right? Where the sand is so fragile, the building is bound to collapse. I think what is important is the foundations. You need to have the right data foundations, need to have the right governance, software principles, and then you use AI to amplify your data and use it for analytics. So I think it's important to make sure that people still focus on fundamentals and build AI on top of it.
So my takeaway is this I and T and W and U and O. And maybe O with an arrow that continuously evolving and evolutionary. So time is up, but one last question for all of you. So CV is a manifestation of our skill set and talent. And it says beyond code, domain, discipline. Imagine we are in 2030. What would your CV look like? Will it still have education from this place and domain and this, or what kind of CV would you? So give me an imaginary CV in 2030. What will it contain different from what we do now? Because we are going beyond code, beyond domain, domain discipline. Start with you.
I think, build curiosity and be a good problem solver.
But how will you put that in a CV? I'll ask you for your CV. You'll say, I'm a good problem solver and I'm a curious person.
Passionate problem solver.
Okay.
Yeah, very tough question, I would say. Next 30 years.
This one is out of course. We didn't discuss it, so I put them on a spot.
Yeah. Yeah, sucker for knowledge. I think I would say that.
See, now the CV has become a phrase. Okay, go ahead.
Impact I've created and failures I have had.
Okay.
Experience in kind of solving diverse problems, showing a consistent track record around curiosity.
Opportunity creator and taking people along.